know us. There's some different faces here today. There's a new team basically taking over Service Design Drinks. But for the other half of the people who haven't been to Service Design Drinks before, welcome for a start. How did you actually hear about this meetup or find out about it? Was it like a social media post or a friend told you? Friends? Someone that friend? Cool. What about others? We're really curious.
Well, Adam posted about it.
Yeah. Adam. Yeah. How many people found out from Adam? Yeah, okay.
Thanks, Dan.
So, cool. Well, yeah, welcome to the evening. We've actually, there's going to be a little bit of a difference for people that have been here before, where we don't have the kind of activity at the end, where you do a practical activity, because we heard from the last organisers that sometimes this was hit and miss, or some people really just came for the mingling and the drinks and chatting. So we've got a couple of quick talks for you this evening, and then just more drinks and mingling and meeting each other. We wanted to express what this evening, what this meetup is actually about. It's not just about coming and hearing a talk or a couple of talks. It's about inclusion, so everyone and anyone is welcome. It doesn't matter who you are, where you are, what you do. You could be a student, you could be a professional, you could just be a friend of someone who's come along to see what it's all about. And it's about so much more than just the talks. It's about meeting people, making connections, leveling up and kind of skilling up in your career maybe. It's about also sharing and learning from each other, not even just what's on the screen in the talks, but learning new things by actually talking to people and having drinks and mingling with people. And it's about getting speaking practice and coaching from us. We're really opening the stage up to welcome anyone who wants to give even just a mini talk, just to even practice their first time speaking, or practice a talk that they want to give somewhere else and practice it here first. So I'm going to talk more about that later. But and then of course it's about having drinks and meeting people and kind of having fun as well. So just to introduce ourselves for people who are either brand new or used to come, and there were a different bunch of organisers here. Oh yeah, thanks. These are the 5 of us who are behind Service Design Drinks in Berlin. And Service Design Drinks is actually all over the world. So if you search on Eventbrite or Google, you'll find meetup events all around the world with the name Service Design Drinks. So we'll do some really quick introductions. Maybe we'll go in order of what's on the screen and just introduce something. oh, shall I just say and you guys can just stand there? Okay. Yeah. So Marty over there is a senior service designer at Fjord, which is a great digital agency. Innovation consultancy in Berlin. Melanie Robolino is a senior strategic designer at BCG Digital Ventures, the longest name of any agency in the world. And so we're also very similar, innovation consultancy. Gabor is not here yet because he's putting his little baby to bed, but he should be here pretty soon, I think. And he works at Helios, he's a senior strategic designer there, so we've all kind of been in the design scene in Berlin for quite a while, and have been running events and working, and we're bringing all these different perspectives to this kind of event. And we all started and met kind of attending these kind of events as well. Then there's Adam B. Cochran, or everyone knows him as Adam, who's a service designer at Zalando, and also knows a few people in the crowd. And then there's me, my name is Dee, and I am now freelance, which is amazing, by the way. If anyone has questions about freelancing, please talk to me. I've just started about 4 months ago, and it's fantastic. And I've done UX design, service design, product strategy, and now freelancing. So they're the faces. We've got kind of different name tags on, so feel free to come and talk to us, especially if you're interested in giving a talk, or you work for a company that might be interested in hosting something like this. We'd really love to talk to you. Cool. So now I'd love to welcome Valentina, Val from Ahoy, who are our great host today and provided the drinks and this wonderful space. And I'll let Val give a little introduction to Ahoy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
Awesome. Welcome. It's going to be super fast, and then I'll let you guys get to the design stuff. This is Ahoy Berlin. We're part of the Notel company, which is also Flexible Office Solutions. In this space here, we're also doing office solutions pretty much from like 3-person offices, so small to really big private company areas like 100, 200 people. We actually have right now, this is also my dog, Ellie, curious and friendly. We have actually right now 2 private company areas that are opening, so if you're interested, it's about 24 people for one, and the other one will be about 50 people. And those are like self-sufficient areas, so they'll have like their own kitchen and conference rooms. And let's see, yeah, so these are the different things that we offer. We also do events just like this. Also like company offsites, we have several conference rooms where we offer that, or if you have like meetings or all-day events, where we also provide catering for that, whatever you want, or drinks. Sometimes, like this, we sponsor the event. It's a special thing, so it's not all the time, but if you are interested or think that it would be a benefit to our community, then do come to me, or for anything else at all. I've left a few business cards on these tables, so you can contact me if any of that sounds interesting, or just come and talk to me in person. Cool. So I'll leave you guys to it. Thank you. Oh yeah, here's our looking to set sail with us. Then you can hit us up. But also just come to me personally instead of emailing info. Awesome. Thank you guys.
Thank you, Val. Next away. I've been in a few events in this space, like with other companies I've worked for as well, and it's just hands down the coolest event space. And we host these events at a different place every month to mix it up and give people a chance to see inside companies and venues that they might want to work with. So, and I've seen so many places, and this is definitely the nicest, biggest chandeliers hanging off things and ropes hanging off things space ever. Thank you very much, Ahoy. We've actually got a phone camera set up here, and we're recording audio here, so I have to not move too far. Adam, please tell me if I move too far from the microphone. But if you don't want to be, we've also got someone with a camera, I think it's Mella, just taking some photos for us to use on the events so that people can see that cool people like you come to these events. But if you don't want to be in the photos, just come and tell either, is it you with the camera the whole time? So go tell Adam, completely fine, it's totally reasonable to not want to be in a photo that ends up on a website. Please just come and tell us if you don't want to be in any of the photos or videos. And we'll make sure we then cut you out of anything. Cool. So tonight we have 2 treats. One from a speaker called Dee Scarano, who will give a really quick 10-minute sneak peek into a book that's actually just been released. The release date wasn't confirmed, but it just got released, I think, yesterday or the day before, called The Ethical Design Handbook. And I got an advanced copy of that and read it, and I'm just going to give you the quick sneak peek so you can see whether you want to buy the book or not. And then we have a talk by Leandro Velasco, who's sitting right here, who's a senior product designer at SoundCloud, and he's going to talk about ethics in design. So the whole kind of theme of the evening is about ethics in design. Okay, so I'm going to jump straight in and introduce our first speaker, who is Dee Scarano, and she's going to talk about the Ethical Design Handbook. Adam, can you please give me like a 10-minute thing on the timer? It's not going to beep, I turn the sound off, but I want to see my time. Okay, so welcome Dee! Woo! Okay, so I'm going to try and go quickly through these. It's really just an overview of what's in this book. I'm not going to go into the detail and give you all the info because you're going to decide whether or not you want to actually get the book for yourself. These are the chapters, and I've just taken little snippets out of each one, and we're going to go through them one by one, starting with the need for ethics in design. Most people in the audience probably know why we need to think ethically when we're designing things, but just to cover a few of the things that the book covers, some of the worst reasons to think about ethics, for us to think about ethics when we're designing products and services, are things like mass surveillance, and of course not just with cameras and things outside, but online surveillance, segregation, and really cutting out people from markets and products and different things based on personal information and segregating people, dark patterns, which we all know, who knows what dark patterns are, kind of nasty, subliminal things that you don't even know are happening, where people are making you click on something because you didn't even realize that that's what it was going to do when you clicked on it, things like that. They're really behavioral things that make you do something that you don't realize you're actually about to do. Persuasive pricing, pricing things so that it makes us purchase something because it's working with our psychology to make it look like it's cheaper than it is. And then, of course, things like device addiction and manipulative design, which I think those last two are the biggest, worst reasons that people are actually wanting to make you addicted to their service, to their product, and designing things in a way to actually keep you hooked, which is, it's so common. We all know that that exists, but when you think about what's behind it, it's really quite horrible. So this all made me think about, from my experience, one of the most common reasons for a design project to happen is this. Your manager or your boss or your client comes in and says, we need to increase user engagement in our product. Who's worked on a project where this has been the main reason for what you're working on? Yes, I think probably everyone at some point, or at least a feature or something. I want to increase user engagement. But what this actually means is that we're thinking about that from the perspective of what can we make our users do so that we can get more money. Maybe not more money out of their wallet, but more of their attention, more of their time. We're thinking about how can we get something from the user. And there's this great quote in the book that comes from Ronald Balkin from the Small Technology Foundation. And the quote is, when a company like Facebook improves the user experience of their products, it's like the massages we give to Kobe beef. They're not for the benefit of the cow, but to make the cow a better product. And the punchline is, in this analogy, you are the cow. We say we're increasing user engagement or improving the user experience, but what we're actually doing most of the time is figuring out how to get more money, more attention, more something from the cow, from the user. So I thought this was a great quote to represent this perspective that we think is fine and we think is normal, and instead of thinking, okay, how can we get more out of the user, we might just be able to twist our perspective a little bit and think more, what can we give to the user, what can we do to help the user. Sometimes we think we are helping the user, but there's always this business perspective twisting us back the other way around. So,
I'm sure I understand.
who's got an Apple Watch? It's the most annoying thing. There's a couple of, yeah, like one. Yeah, it's fine. It's down now. So they also define in this first chapter ethics. The definition of ethics is the duty and responsibility to treat others with fairness and respect. And then they give this definition of ethical design: businesses, products and services that grow from a principle of fairness and fundamental respect towards everyone involved. So growing from that perspective rather than starting from the money business perspective. And it doesn't mean you can't do both, but it does make a big difference which one you start with. Okay, so on to chapter 2. Those were the highlights of chapter 1. Creating positive change is chapter 2. And there are 3 things that it outlines that are really simple. They might take a little while to implement, but simple things you can actually do to actually create positive change in your organisation or in the work that you do. The first one sounds a little dry, but is to create an ethical governance model. So to create, basically write down a set of rules or standards that when you start a new project, when you start a new piece of work, when you're working with a client, you say, this is the way that we run our projects. It would have something like a definition of ethical standards, a description of how to design things to meet those standards, and then a description of how you would test to see if you've actually designed something that meets those standards, like success criteria. So in the book, it really outlines exactly how you would create that ethical governance model and merge it or add it into whatever models you already have. The second thing is to have this, I love this one, this is super easy to implement. One person in the organisation or on the project who's responsible for ethical practices. So visibly in the company, there's one person that anyone can say, oh, I'm not sure we're considering this, and my project manager's just going, but I think I want to flag this. I can go to that one person and say, hey, I think we need this to be looked into, and that person has the mandate to be able to pause projects or dig in and find out how to remedy the situation. I love that one. And then this is also great. one person in each project to act as the critic. So one person who surely would have another role in the project as well, but to act as the critic and kind of be the negative side of, oh, this is really cool, but have we thought about that? These are really simple things to implement. So, chapter 3 is called Respect-Driven Design, and this is where it also talks about a couple of things that you can do, start to implement to come from this perspective of respect-driven design rather than money-driven design, I guess is the alternative. The first one it says is to introduce UX exposure hours. Does anyone actually have this in a company that they've worked in? Know what it is? I've had it in one company, it was Clear Foundry, and it's where it's mandatory for the design team, or actually even everyone in the company is really great, to make it mandatory for them to have 2 hours a month or something where they listen to recorded user interviews, or they listen to the customer service line or something like that, where they're getting exposure to user complaints or challenges, or exposure to the kind of UX team. So this is a really great and easy idea. Then the second one is designing for the most vulnerable. So this is talking about, there's lots of different types of people we could be talking about here. Children, elderly, and people with impairments are some obvious ones. And then there's a great example that's in the book, I wanted to show because it illustrates this so well. There's these two game apps that it compares. One is called Hip Hop Dance School, where the whole game is designed to, probably not on purpose, but the effect that it ends up having is teaching kids that fame is important. You're just trying to get more famous and win by being the best. That cool people are skinny, that girls wear trendy clothes, and that boys work out. And it's giving these messages. It's probably just the designers were trying to make a cool app, and they ended up not thinking about it and giving these messages to kids. And then alternatively, there's an app called Dance Free, and it has almost the opposite, because it started from the perspective of thinking about the audience that it was designing for and thinking of the effect that it could have on kids. So here they literally say kids can be whoever they want. Their motto is everyone both fits in and stands out, and they focus on play, innovation and inclusion in their design process. So they've started from this perspective of thinking ethically instead of thinking about the money first. I love this example. Chapter 4, the business of ethical design. So thinking about how to fit this into actually making business work. This was a really dry, heavy chapter, so I've just got a few punchlines here. Thinking about planning and testing. If you integrate or insert ethical design practices into your roadmap, into your planning, at that time when you're really planning the project, and insert the measurements of ethical features into your testing plan. So just adding, it doesn't have to add a lot of work at all, but just thinking about this so that when you're making a testing plan, you're thinking not just testing if people can click the buttons and do the things that they want to do, but finding things to measure if you're being ethical in the actual implementation of what you've done. Then something the book also has, I think you can actually just download this for free already from the website, is that they've given an ethical design scorecard. It's an Excel sheet with multiple cards that you can just download and use, where you can kind of rate a service or product that you're working on or you've designed. So that's really useful as well. Chapter 5, ethical design best practices. Here they gave 3 things, and this is where it gets really practical, where you can literally copy what's in the book and use templates and things to actually apply in your projects. The first one is they give guidelines on how to make ethical cookie consent things, ethical authentication, ethical terms and conditions, data collection, sensible default choice, which is that thing where you might have multiple options but you highlight one of them, progressive disclosure, filtering and notification. So they literally spell out things you need to consider and things to do to make those things. So it's really actually very practical and applicable. The second thing is they recommend ethical tools. So pre-existing tools that you can use for web analytics, surveys and social plugins, and they just have a big list of the tools that work really well with ethical practices. And then they give these things called blueprints, which they call building blocks for ethical design. and they have blueprints for these 8 things: onboarding, authentication, shopping, recommendations, checkout, newsletters, loyalty programs, and subscriptions. So some of the really big main things where people can get tripped up, like accidentally subscribe to something or accidentally authenticate, and they use a public thing and then it posts to Facebook and all these kinds of things. So they give these blueprints, and I just want to give an example because it's like, what is a blueprint? I don't know. So they look like this, and they're just very simple, but they basically give you the guidelines for what things you need to consider when building any of those things. So it gives you a very quick kind of cross-check to make sure that you're thinking about the right stuff. Last thing, and this is really quick at the end, this is the last chapter, and it just summarizes the whole book by getting you to think back on what that all meant. It starts with, which I think is really practical and valid, is that proving that this would work. Sometimes we're like, yeah, we want to be ethical, but my manager won't buy this. We just want to make money and not spend any more time or effort. So they say that proving a valid business case to switch to ethical design usually takes at least one pilot project. And sometimes it's easier to go undercover and then present the results of that in the organisation. So maybe you don't tell anyone that you're doing this, but if you happen to be working on a project where you can maybe put in a few extra hours to try and implement these things and then showcase it to your company or to your project lead or boss, this is a way you can really get the rest of the organisation working in this way. And oh yeah, another quote. There'll always be business for 80 companies, but the trend, luckily we're in a time and age where the trend is moving towards more ethical practices and sustainability, meaning if we do things that where we treat people well, they're more likely to stay with us and we'll have a more sustainable service. And I wanted to end with this phrase again, doing a project to increase user engagement. Maybe instead of starting with this business mindset, and I could put this phrase in, think not about what your users can do for you, but about what you can do for your users. And it doesn't mean changing a whole lot, but just switching that perspective and starting from that point, and still means that you can actually allow for all of the business and all of the money, but you're starting from that ethical perspective. Okay, I went slightly over 10 minutes, but this is the overview and summary of the book. I don't know if anyone has any questions because I didn't write the book, so I probably can't answer too many. Did anyone have any? Yeah?
Yeah, actually, I just from the last quote, thank you for the talk first.
Thanks.
What the users can do for you, but when I think about it, I'm a service designer, right? So I also design back-end processes, I optimize services, I move companies from product-based portfolio to service-based portfolio. So also the employee experience is changing. Yeah. A lot of people who are organized in workers, unions, maybe go into service-based jobs, yep. With totally different conditions. Mm. Is there any guidelines in the book, or do you know anything to how to start a conversation there?
Yeah.
Without sounding like a communist?
That's a great topic, but the book really thinks about that kind of consumer. We're designing for consumers' perspective. So you should still get the book. I just think it's a cool book, by the way. Like, I'm not making any profits off the book, but no, it doesn't really cover. But you could apply some of the principles, I'm sure, outside. But yeah, it's focusing mainly on us designing products and services for consumers. By others. We'll just put like 2 minutes on the clock, maybe. Yeah.
I assume this is for digital design, or it's just for...
It's got a lot, most of the examples are from digital things, like it's referencing Facebook and Google and other things like that as bad examples, and then referencing, yeah, you saw one of those examples I gave there. It's mostly talking about digital, but again, I think a lot of the principles would apply. What are you thinking in particular?
I once worked for a product for a fast-moving consumer goods company, and they said it's got to be disposable, so it has to be thrown away. So
yeah, okay. I think a lot of the principles would still apply, but it is focusing on digital services. Yeah. Is there one more? Okay. Okay, that's the end of my talk. Thank you very much. That's great. Cool. Thank you very much to Dee for that talk about the Ethical Design Handbook. You can go and purchase it now. You get the ebook as well. So that was a mini talk which should have been 10 minutes. I think I did about 12. That's still pretty good for me, in 2 minutes at a time. If you're interested in doing a mini talk, this is where we would have this every month, where there's a 10-minute time slot for someone to practice their public speaking, even run a little workshop or do whatever they'd like in a 10-minute time slot. So also, if you've got employees or colleagues or friends who are nervous about public speaking, they'll also get some advanced help and coaching from us where we go through the slides with them, give them some pointers, and even do a run through with them as well. So we'd love to make this community not just about sharing big expert talks, but giving people the opportunity to come and practice themselves. So come and talk to any one of us if you or someone you know might like to do that. Another little announcement. If you want to see the photos or videos or just follow along and find out the next dates of the next meetup, we're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn. And we have a mailing list as well, which some of you might be on. How many of you are actually on the mailing list and found like keeping up that way and get your email and then you get a ticket? No? Really interested? Okay. How many people then kind of saw a social media post and then got a ticket? We're really sorry to do this, but we're really curious. Okay, cool. It's really interesting. Great. Okay, and one more announcement before we go to our next speaker is the Service Jam. Your arms are going to be tired by the end of tonight, but who's heard of perfect timing. Who's heard of the Global Service Jam?
Me.
Yay! Who's been to a Global Service Jam?
Me.
Yay! So the group of us, the 5 of us you saw on the screen before, used to organise the Global Service Jam in Berlin. We did it for 5 years. 5 years. And we've since handed it over to another group, and we've actually taken over the Service Design Drinks and started organising that. So I'd love to actually welcome Nick to the stage to tell us something about... Yay! Do you want to tell us a little bit about the jam?
Yeah, I guess.
Doesn't have a slide.
Don't have, okay, so I have one slide. This is the slide. So the Service Design Jam, it's basically a weekend where you go through a service design double diamond process, which is a whole lot of fun. So what happens actually is this is organized all over the world at the same time, or on the same weekend, obviously, because time zone stuff. But there's sort of a global community, and you have one kind of inspiration of some sort, whatever it is. And from that inspiration, which could be a picture, or a movie, or something, everyone gets together in their small groups and starts to like ideate and find a problem, and then they go out on the streets to talk to people, and then they find a solution, and then they prototype that solution, and then they show the solution. It's amazing. It really actually is. It's a whole lot of fun, and it's also really cool to like not only for like calling a networking event sounds super boring because you don't just like spend time talking to other people like I don't do. So, but you actually get to work with a lot of people also from like completely different backgrounds. So even if you're not a designer, if you are, I don't know, an engineer, or you work in health services, or I don't know, you build sculptures out of wood, you might as well just go there and you can still learn stuff and have a lot of fun. It's actually really, really cool. And it's a really intense weekend too, so we start on Friday evening, you kind of team up, have a slow start, get some pizza, and then Saturday early morning it starts, and then it's just like until late in the evening, it's doing stuff all day and all night. So if you join, don't plan on going out Saturday night, because Sunday you have to be back early in the morning and then continue. So, but yes, we just organized it. We actually just got the place, Scenario, Professorstraße. It's really nice. It's a really nice space, and we have everything in place to make it a great weekend. So we'll be very happy to join. So you can check out everything at jamberlin.org. You can also purchase the tickets there. We have a link for the Eventbrite page. We also have student prices, and we have.
Just one question. The topic is going to be a surprise.
Yes.
Well, there isn't really a topic as such. There's generally like an inspirational point. For example, it could be an image of a blue sky. for a horse in a blue sky. And then from that point on, you basically do a bit of a brainstorming exercise. You get coaches. So every group gets their own coach that will guide you also through all of the exercises. So you're not just stuck there sitting alone and doing something, but you get guided through it, and then from there on, you actually. I know it sounds silly, and I know it sounds like that probably won't work, but it really does.
Can I give an example?
Yes.
So if you're wondering, it's not like Zalando sponsors and we're doing fashion service. It's never corporate, it's never anything like that. But my favorite one is a few years ago where the theme was announced. It's always just announced and no one knows what it's going to be and it's secret, and then you watch the video, launch announcement video. And my favorite year, it was just a video of one of these paper
Chooser things.
thingies. What are they called?
Where you have the colors
Where you
of
have
the choice.
you play a game, and then you open the thing. But it was just that paper thing. That was the topic for you. And people were like, what is that? What does that mean? Is it like how to make decisions and choosing, or surprises, or communication, and or choices, or language, and teams all interpreted it differently, and some made language services, and some made decision-making tools, and all these different kinds of things. But the point of the weekend is to learn the process and experience the process. So the topic is kind of always fun and interesting and can be interpreted in different ways.
Yeah, it's a really great event to send your mum, in case she's like wondering what you do day to day.
Yeah.
Perfect event.
Some of my friends went along who have nothing to do with service design in any way, but they just wanted to see and have a fun weekend and see what it was that I did. Yeah.
Cool.
It's really, really amazing. I also went there without being a service designer or anything.
Yeah,
I
that's
had
right.
nothing to do, and it was fun, and now I'm organizing it.
Yeah.
It plants the seed,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
from then on it sprouts. And, yeah.
We'll get good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
So we're going to go straight into the next talk. Rather than have a big break in the middle where everyone talks and mingles around, we've just got 2 short talks, and within 20 minutes or so you'll just be having drinks and mingling and networking again. I would like to introduce the second and last speaker for the evening, Leandro Velasco, who's a senior product designer at SoundCloud, and he's going to be speaking to us about ethics in design. Thanks very much.
Thanks a lot, Dee. That was a good talk. If everyone needs to go to the bathroom, the time is now, because I'm going to take a minute or 2 to introduce myself, so it's not super important. I see you. So yeah, I'm Leandro. I'm actually originally from the Philippines. I moved to Canada. Philippines?
Yeah.
No, I guess not Philippines. But I moved to Canada when I was younger with my family. Any Canadians? Yes! Woo! Yeah, so I moved to Toronto when I was 12 with my family. Studied graphic design actually, so I would say I went through the back doors, the side, whatever door you want to say, through basically design or UX design or UI design. Bit of background, I worked pretty much everywhere. Like I started internship in like magazine place, architecture firm, and then kind of my first exposure to service or UX design is basically working in a digital design agency called Critical Mass. It's a big Canadian one. Also worked at Saatchi's, so advertising agencies. But my first exposure to service design actually worked at Royal Bank of Canada, which is a big bank in Canada. So this is looking at basically the employee-facing, consumer-facing, the whole service of the bank. So I was responsible for mobile, but what's really interesting about that is I was able to really go into the branch and really find out what people do when they come into the branch, try and think about their finances. So it's super cool. So I think the banking really opened up my mind into service design. I moved to Berlin 2 years ago. I also worked in Zalando. Worked at Bain & Consulting, Bain & Company, which is a consulting firm. And now I'm in SoundCloud, which is a music. So very diverse experience. And I think why I'm talking about this is because this really shaped me to start thinking about ethics and how ethics applies in design. I wanted to be a designer because back in the day I enjoyed making things look pretty. I mean, my first exposure was basically like Microsoft Paint and kind of like Photoshop, and I was like, I don't want to go into marketing or accounting, so I want to just make things look pretty. But now, like, why I really enjoy designing is because it really helps people achieve a specific goal and really having like an impact. And we'll like run through this like a little bit deeper as I go. So I think everyone's back in the bathroom now. Ethics is knowing the difference between what you have a right to do and what is right to do. I believe that ethics is so important. I mean, I think everyone, it's a very personal topic, and that's why I think today I felt like, oh yeah, it's so weird giving a talk about ethics, because I usually talk about something very practical, something that I've experienced like in my day-to-day job. But I think ethics is kind of more of a personal thing, and I think we'll dig deeper on that as like I talk. Design is really about like not letting people do what they don't want to do. You know, like it's keeping people from doing what they don't want to do. The role of designer, a PM, an engineer, or any people in that room that you have meetings with have so much influence and power today, and that work reaches so much more people like every single day. So it naturally brings up topics around ethics, responsibility, and what's our accountability. I mean, I think we all came out of a school or maybe not studied design, but we don't do a board. We are design practitioners, but we don't have a specific license for it. But I think what's important to take away for this talk is we do create an impact on other people. And I think we forget that when we're like on our computers designing. So ethics in design. It's something I think about a lot every day now, and it's a very hot topic. I think in like end of last year and beginning of this year. Has anyone heard of Mike Montagnaro? Yeah, amazing book. I mean, it's really about like ruined by design, and I think that's the inspiration why I wanted to give this talk. It's not something that I would say I'm a professional, but it's like kind of like my jumping board on why I wanted to talk and really get more of an open dialogue between us and really talk about this. So, raise your hand if you stayed up too late scrolling on Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, or Netflix and like not ending, like watching anything. Yeah, that's me too. So it's not about our self-control, it's really about how it's designed, you know, like they try to hook us, you know, as long as possible, and it's a very toxic design, and it makes us behave in a way where it really defines us from like our main purpose. Who likes to get a sense of closure? So some sense of accomplishment. Oh, I did that. I did a 5K run. You know, I'm almost done. I think as much as you want to have that accomplishment, a lot of social media services, products tries to prevent you from having that feeling. You know, through history, even 50 years ago, we've gathered basically. If you think about newspapers and even the tech platforms today, instead of helping us reach our goal, we basically get exploited and basically our weaknesses when we're like very vulnerable. Platforms like Facebook, Google, literally make money to get our attention and sell that to the highest bidder. Humans are naturally wired, of course, to have a start and end experience. We all like a narrative. I mean, we like eating out with a friend, finish the dinner, attend a concert, read a book, when my talk is over. Has anyone heard of experience being compared to a restaurant, like restaurant experience, where it's not just one thing, or I mean in service as well, like it's not just about the consumer, it's not just about the employee, it's really the gaps between the product and the service, right? For me, social media is like a buffet. Like there's so many options, and then after a while you just feel like shit. Like I go through Netflix and I'm like, oh my god, like I'm looking, and then no, this show is shit, so I'm gonna move on to a new show, and then at the end of the night I'm like, I didn't accomplish anything. Some companies have realized obviously that their employees are not working, so they started creating tools to help us kind of close the loop. So a good example is probably like Apple iOS. They started showing us how much time we spend on an app. Now we have a little bit of control on notification. Now Instagram, we can deactivate, have an Instagram cleanse. But really, this is only surface level, right? Like this is not the solution for this problem. The solution is for us, like all the designers in the room, service designers, product designers, whatever designers. I think we do have a lot of impact, and our purpose is to really fight against this. So I think my main talk is really about the themes and the areas around ethics and in design. So I found this really good one on Leonard Overkamp. It's called Ethical Design Areas. So I'm going to just start from the left-hand side, focus. I mean, that was kind of like my example. So focus, on the right side for you guys, this is like the current digital landscape, right? Like what you said, we all have to design for engagement. We all have to fight for people's focuses. The attention for designing for focus is it's our responsibility to handle the most valuable money or precious for someone, which is time. You know, like we can't buy time, and we're pretty much almost robbing people's time if we design something that is broken or bad. Sustainability, just going this way. Sustainability is what's the impact of our work in the world's environment, resource, and climate. So I think someone mentioned disposable things. I think a good example too is the Volkswagen emission tests. I mean, a few years ago, like an engineer literally like designed a software that would pass a certain test, but then wouldn't pass when they're on the road. But I think there's companies out there, specifically in Berlin. I'm not sure if you guys heard of Ecosia. It's basically a search engine where when you search, they kind of tally your searches and then it plants a tree, for example. Moving on, society. What is the impact digital technology has on society? I think this is more on topics around mental health, democracy, relationship, politics. So like good examples of this is like how Tinder changed the dating game. I mean, my parents never had this kind of like, you know, swipe right, swipe left. There's so many options that we just, oh, this guy's boring, this girl like blah, 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 whatever. And even Instagram, you know, like the creation of false reality. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I only post obviously nice photos of me. And obviously on my stories, right? Like I went on a ski trip, like yeah, everything is amazing. But I think as designers, you have to be mindful on how this really impacts and how it scales up. I mean, back in the day when Twitter was created, and this is kind of based on examples in the book I mentioned earlier, no one really thought that would be used for political games, right? Like now there's even harassment is such a big issue on Twitter or other social platforms. So I think society is a really big theme in here. Now I'm going into more kind of day-to-day stuff I think most of us are exposed to. Usability, I mean, this is a basic sort of requirements for like our design skills. Like something needs to be usable. If it's unusable, then it's like a design failure, right? Like we want to make sure that we're not designing buttons that would explode like a Hosei, for example. I don't know an example, but I think I've seen like elevators where I'm trying to press up, but then the button is somehow not labeled, or like wayfinding systems. So there's definitely a lot on usability there. Accessibility, I mean, I've been exposed to this a lot because I mean in service as well, because we want to make sure that our products and our services are accessible to the masses. I think I want to mention also accessibility is not about just being accessible to everyone, but also inclusive design. I think this is also a really big topic right now. Inclusive design is making sure that we're not looking at edge cases, like there is no edge case. You should really be thinking about everyone and not just one group or your main target audience. Privacy, so we have to consider how much information that is necessary for us to do our jobs. I think in Europe it's a little bit better because we have the GDPR, which is also like my first exposure. Like every law, like the GDPR laws here are very strict. I mean, for America, I think it's a little less strict. I'm not quite sure, but at least like 2-3 years ago when I came here, GDPR laws came into effect. I was like, whoa, every organization is really have to apply to this. User involvement, I think it's an overlap between privacy, but it's basically how is the user's data involved in our day-to-day? How do we use that? How do we exploit it? I think a good documentary is Cambridge Analytica. I mean, I got super scared. To be honest, like maybe I was like a little bit, not really caring about data because I'm like from America, and I think in Germany or in Europe people take this very seriously. But now I'm super scared that my mom is like posting everything on Facebook. But like it's just very crazy that people can really exploit these data and really make you, control your behavior and your thinking. Last one is persuasion. I think this was mentioned by Dee. So ethics related about persuasion is really what the extent we have influence on someone's behavior. So I think a good example here is like conversion optimization. It can easily turn into how can we squeeze more money out of our consumers. So I think I didn't want to like have too many slides. Actually, I'm trying a new thing where there's only 10 slides. Good for you. So this is my summary. Be difficult. I mean, I like being difficult at work. I also like being difficult outside of work. But just be difficult. I mean, this is super. I know it's super like kind of common sense, but it's our job to really say why. It's our job to say no. If you're not asking these questions, or if you're not creating tension in your jobs, then you're basically just saying what people want to hear. And you're just, you're kind of just giving an answer that would save your skin or get you that promotion or get you that paycheck every day. But the answer that you want to say is like, why are we doing this? No, we cannot do this because of that. Your job is to design things, and you want to design it the right way and the ethical way. Data and research is our weapon. I mean, this is again a little bit kind of like always on me that I always make sure that we're, taking research, not just, oh yeah, I heard that, noting this, noting that. Take a couple of stickies, present it to everyone, and then apply it to your design. But let's make sure that we're also not exploiting it. I think there's a good balance of using data and research-driven decisions, but also we have intuition, right? I mean, most of us are designers that have design intuition. We have couple of years of experience, maybe not. But I would say there's still the right balance to it. Call out the dark patterns. I mean, this was mentioned again. I think the hardest part about calling out dark patterns is you just have to make sure you have another solve for the problem. I understand that we all have to survive and we have to get that paycheck and we have families. And when we're kind of faced with business requirements and business sort of people, I mean, in my main experience, where like you're going into a room full of kind of basically C-levels, and you have to argue like, no, we cannot do this because of that. But then for them, it's like, no, then we're going to lose $1 million. Why do we have to do this? So I think it's just like calling it out and making sure that it aligns with your values, because I think the biggest learning for me is not making sure that I'm being authentic to myself and that I've called it out and I've made sure that I've kind of give two options and tried my best. So, but I'm not saying that. Of course, there's different situations. Where am I? Get other people who are not like you in the room. I think this is my biggest one because I think coming from a very diverse background, I mean, I was basically from the Philippines, moving to Canada. I was different. I mean, I knew how to speak English, obviously, but it was still super different. I think what I want to say here is make sure that you're not in a room with the same people like you. I mean, if you're in a room with the exact same people, then you're going to have the exact same opinion, the exact same solution. Make sure that you're including people that not just yourself. I think another good example here is like when I was in high school, and kind of like my good girlfriend was like, oh, it's so late, I'm going to get so scared, like walking down an alley. I mean, as a woman, I can empathize, but I don't know how to do it. So even if you're the nicest person in the room and you mean the best, you're not going to see what you don't know. So just make sure that you are involving everyone and a very diverse people. The last one, define your principles and values early. So I think when I was starting today, I said ethics is a very personal topic, and I think this is what I'm getting at. I mean, your principles and values differ from every single one of you. My value and my principle would be different from you, or whoever in this room. I think it's important to define your values up front. For example, some might think working at a tobacco company is as bad as working at a fashion company, or, I don't know, Coca-Cola or something. Other things you might not be able to compare that. And that's okay, like not everyone is perfect. There's no right or wrong answers in ethics. It's really just about defining your limits and defining your principles. And just ethics is just about your own code. So I want to take maybe 2 minutes and maybe we can let's define together our own code of ethics to live by. So I would love if you guys kind of just take 1 minute to think about in your head, what can I ask next time I'm confronted with something that's unethical? Or what can I ask myself to make sure that I'm designing something ethical? So I'll just give you guys 1 minute. I mean, there's no music. And if anyone has one, I would love to hear it. Yeah. Miguel?
So, if you have a request that you think is unethical, can you respond with what is the cost of not doing it?
Say that again, sorry?
What is the cost to the company of not doing it?
What's the cost of not doing it?
So, if they suggest something that you do and you think it's unethical, a reply is you see what the benefit is of doing it, but what is the cost of not doing it? Sort of put that on a matrix so that you can evaluate whether it's worth doing.
Yep.
Or maybe just throw it back at the spreadsheet DOMs.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone heard it. Do you want to?
It's fine.
Okay. It was really, okay.
Can you repeat it for the
I'll Hello?
Yeah.
To be honest, I don't know if I heard the full thing. I heard a first thing.
What I said was, you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like I'm projecting with you now. If you get a request and you feel it's unethical, you can reply by asking what is the cost of not doing it, right? Because you're given usually a benefit to doing this thing, and they're showing you what the sort of ROI of doing this request. But what's the opposite of that? If you don't do it,
Yeah. What is the fact? What is
Yeah.
the result? So what is the
trying
cost?
these different ways.
What is the cost of doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I think on this maybe what I find interesting is, I don't know what the English word is, norm. You have Werte und Normen in Germany. I think Werte und Normen, and I think it's very easy to do something because it's the norm, because everybody's doing it, because it doesn't cause you sacrifices. And to do something for your values, you will have to make a sacrifice. Then it's becoming a value because you're actually learning to stand in for this. So actually saying, if it doesn't cost you anything, then I would say to be the value. Like, you know, to be the value, I actually need to make a sacrifice. It's not the easiest solution, but then I realized that it actually is something which is above any business point of perspective or user's point of perspective. It's my personal code of conduct.
Yeah.
I think I have two ideas. I mean, I have one hack, and I have one thing I think that is a mindset thing. First of all, we all should understand what the company we're working for is actually doing. What is the impact of that? Because I work with a lot of people who do not know and who do not understand the business case of the company, who do not understand what it actually means if the company is growing or producing more product or is getting better, because that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to make a lot of companies better in what they're doing. And I think the second one, because I work with a lot of freelancers, I've been a freelancer myself, and like if something like drives away from what I actually think is right, I just charge them double.
It's a good hack.
It's a good hack because it actually gives the other people who do the right thing at least a competitive advantage. So, because I also have to pay my bills like everybody else. But like some things are just off the roster, I know that, but like some things where you gradually, okay, what is that good for? You know, so at least pay a lot of money for that.
Dave?
I have a question that, what am I not thinking about? Which is good in lots of situations, but yeah, I think that's the recurring thing for me, having delved into this topic, is there's so many things that we don't think about.
Yeah.
And if we just ask ourselves that question, maybe we'll think for a second and find something we missed.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, sorry.
Okay. I just wanted to emphasize on the what we are currently doing now is realizing the responsibility of us as designers. I would not say the others are not responsible, but maybe the designer person is kind of a, I think we have a broader perspective maybe than other people in companies often, and so I think it's a good position to say, okay, look, I have seen this, and I don't know if this is the right thing. So I think first of all it starts with being able to see our own responsibility, not alone, but I think that we have one, because we are really the people. Of course the programmers and developers are also putting code in it, but we are designing the buttons and they program it. But in the end, I think this is the first starting point. And I also see the question of we live in times where we really get it's going back to where you actually know what's good and not bad. So I think yes, everyone has a code of conduct and it's really individual. But I also think maybe we come to a point where we say, okay, we can say this is not good. So like we all say, okay, we don't want to work for weapon deployers or something like that. Okay, but there are also things which I think nowadays which we can say these are not good things, and not be afraid of telling them out loud.
I mean, like for myself too, I think something that's a little bit more kind of high level is more like when I use it myself. I mean, going back to food, because I like food, I'm a little hungry right now. It's almost kind of like if you're cooking a meal, like would you actually eat this meal, right? Like is it something that you would actually let your mom use? Like would you let your family, your loved ones use this service? I think we need to start looking into, do we really believe that this is helping someone, and if it's going to be misused in the future. And I know this sounds super like kind of like la la la, and it's not really something we can apply tomorrow. But I think it's just important to know like that we're not just working and building something for one group. We want to make sure that we're not making others suffer, for example. I think, yeah, we're like in a golden age right now, like what you mentioned. 8-9 years ago when I started as a designer, I was just making things look pretty, making design systems, and I don't really know the impact of my work. But now that I'm seeing the world change so quickly, like my role changed so quickly that now I actually have to sit at the table and influence. We need to like start using that. Cool. Moving on to the last one. Products, services, and design we're doing today reach more and more people every day. I think it's really easy to like fall in love with like big brands, like big services, big technical challenges, like prestigious work. But I think what we need to really know is like what we stand for and why we do what we do is what makes the difference, right? Be the person you want to, like what I mentioned, be the person you want to be cooking your meals for, and be the gatekeepers. Like we're kind of the last line of defense for users out there that hopefully is probably thinking, oh, hopefully someone is out there that is looking out after me. Whatever you're designing is not being reached by 1 or 2 or 3 people. It's being literally reached by thousands, if not millions of people. So we just have to make sure that we are like the gatekeeper and we're the last line of defense before that ships and goes to market. This is like a personal motto for me. I mean, this is my last slide. Our greatest fear should not be of failure, but of succeeding at something that doesn't really matter. I think this is what really motivates me to build something that matters. To me, to you, to everyone. Build what's right, and design ethics would follow, like your code of ethics would follow. Similar to any design role or skill, like we all try to find our voice and stuff, but I think if we just remember that failing is okay, but we just have to make sure we're not failing at the wrong things and succeeding at the right things. That's it for me. Before I run to some questions, we are hiring. So jobs.soundcloud.com. Our design team is growing right now. We have 4 roles actually. So the first one is the director of product design on the listener experience. So this is for basically people who are listening to music. We have a couple of product design roles. So we have 2 senior product design roles for insights and royalties, which is more kind of like data driven, which is super important. We have search and recommendations. And we also have a product designer for payments and marketing tech. So reach out after me after the talk and we can talk about it. But yeah, any questions? Yeah.
Are these ethical jobs? Or how is it ethical to work at SoundCloud?
To be honest, like I worked at Zalando in Adam, don't tell anyone. I've worked at different places, for example in Zalando, I was working at Search and Experience, right? I mean, you can always find value and purpose in the job you're doing, which is great. But at the end of the day, I find that what I'm doing at SoundCloud, actually, I'm on the creator experience side. I'm responsible for kind of like the workflow team, which is pretty much the artists and the musicians that are up and coming and really trying to, either get their music out there, get listened to, and I'm trying to basically unblock all the different tensions that they have to upload the music on the platform. So for me, at the end of the day, I find that I'm helping also creative people like artists and musicians to excel in their job. Working at Bing and then SoundCloud and Zalando, we all have to make money. I mean, service, we all have to make money at some point, but it's just being ethical and responsible and where do we put that paywall? Is it fair? Where do we actually not exploit like asserted behavior? So I think another good sort of example for me, like on my growth sort of time and also like in just general, there's like making money doesn't replace like a good product. I mean, if you have a good product or a service, people would come to you. I mean, if I like the service of like a particular restaurant, I would go there not based on just like different types of food, but because of the atmosphere of the service. So yeah, I think I'm going too much to like ethicals, but yeah. So working at SoundCloud, I think, in a way, is ethical, but at the same time, every company has to make money. So we do, like what Dee said, have to increase engagement, you know, increase growth, make money. But it's really about you, like the person in that room, saying this is the right decision, this is not the right decision.
So, because you mentioned the artists, and I mean, SoundCloud is great, you can host your own music. Do you think cloud rap is a good thing or a bad thing? And cloud rap. Like,
Cloud rap.
You know, like this 2016 Florida rap, horrible mumble rap is the other description. Do you think you have a responsibility as a platform provider quality of music?
That's a good question. I mean, I think in terms of like quality and like bots and harassment, I mean, it's an ongoing problem, right? Like in any kind of sort of platform, because like we're literally like dumped with a bunch of music or in YouTube, videos, or in Medium. I mean, we all read Medium articles, and that's why I'm like, yeah, they probably all heard this before. I think it's really about kind of just making sure that we're focusing on like the right problems. I think you can't solve every single problem, right? As a designer, I think actually in the book, in the Mule Design, one of the quotes that I remember is, you can't make a difference outside of your job, start with your day job. Meaning like you have to also take baby steps and making sure that you're also influencing other people and changing mindsets of others. But yeah, I mean, in summary, I don't think we cannot solve everything on our own, but I mean, there's so many people in this room and we're affecting so many different products, services that we can make a difference, right? So that's just my point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, also maybe to the question before, I am also interested because it's another streaming service. I mean, there's other streaming services, right? And this one is an open source service. So, of course, with this also comes other values already. So this was maybe also listed why I was also interested because you have other ways of finding out what users want to hear, right? Than other streaming services. You act as a company also more ethical maybe in the sense of grabbing data. Maybe you can tell a little bit about this, how you also go in competition to the other streaming services that don't work open source and therefore don't have the same values.
Yeah, I mean, I think we are open source, but I think it's called like almost like a premium open source, right? Like we also have paywalls. I mean, we're not like what I said. Like everyone needs to somehow be sustainable and make like a decent like business. I think what SoundCloud is good at is really listening to the community. I mean, a big project that I was actually like involved in is like the track-based coda, which is basically changing like the coda on our service so that we can capture more like revenue. And what was the biggest learning there was we actually heard from the community that, oh no, it's like such a bad idea, SoundCloud's going this, that, and actually it was a bit reassuring that the company actually listened to like the Reddit and Twitter, and we actually like didn't launch. So I mean, there was a lot of wasted effort in that like project, but at the end of the day, it kind of gives me reassurance that like we actually do listen to like the users, and it creates like a big impact. So I think bigger companies probably would have more like of a leeway of just like doing a feature to get like a money grab, but SoundCloud actually like listened to like the Reddit posts, the Twitter posts. We all read it, by the way, like in SoundCloud. Like when we're announcing something, we all kind of read our social and community. So I think that's the biggest one. We do definitely like listen to our community. Yeah. Does that answer the question? Or?
Yeah,
No?
yeah, sure. I mean, also because the question before was if it's ethical, and I think it's, especially in the area it works, it's also already more ethical than others. Just an outsider.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And if you have more questions or just want to talk more about it, I don't know if you're staying around for a little bit for another beer. Yeah, great. So yeah, please approach Leandro or anyone or the people you're meeting and you were talking to before. Now is the time for Now is the time for continuing with a few more drinks and chats. Before we finish really the whole presentation thing, this will be next month, the next event on the 1st of April. Yeah. On April Fool's Day, we will have our next event. It's always the first Wednesday of every month. And we'll be hearing from Florian Holstein, who's now working at Facebook in London, design team manager there, on career paths, mindset and upskilling and how to progress in your career. So especially if you have colleagues, junior colleagues, employees, friends who are interested in that kind of topic, please bring them along. We don't have a venue yet, actually. Venue, I talked to Aperto because we really want a big event for this one. If you work at a company or know of a company or a venue that would be able to host this kind of size, like 60, 70 plus people, we would love to hear from you because Aperto just fell through. It looked like it was going to work out and it fell through. Yeah, please let us know. And let us know if you want to give a mini talk. Otherwise, we're probably going to do mini talks each time, but we want other people from the community to get a chance to practice their speaking. So nudge your colleague or your friend or your employee and get them to give a mini talk. Oh, and we're also looking for a sponsor, like not a big one, just a bit of a mini sponsor to sponsor us. We're all, Gabor is here now, right? Right, yeah, so this guy just arrived, is the other circle on the slide. We're all, we're just designers, we're just working and doing this out of love and passion, the same way we did the Global Service Jam for 5 years. We like being involved in the community, practicing speaking for ourselves, and having something exciting and kind of passionate to work on that's not just our day jobs. But we have to do things like web posting and occasionally like buying some wine when we want to have wine at the event and it's not at the venue, and little things like that. We'd love to just have a tiny sponsor to give us $1,000 for the year or something to pay for web posting and stuff like that. And then of course that sponsor would have their name on stuff and have social media posts. So also approach us if you know anyone who might be interested. So that's it for the day. Time to have drinks and make friends. Does anyone have any questions or something that I missed or anything? Oh, it's 8:30 right now, and we have to really lock the door at 9:30, so probably 9:15 we're going to start edging you out, bumping you out the door. But there's still beer and other drinks in the fridge rack. There's still wine there to drink. Did I miss anything, team? No?
Let's make them.
Cool, okay. So thanks very much for coming. I hope you had a good time, and stay and drink and talk and make some friends.